Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in. This is Adesoji Speaks Knowledge, a show for seekers of authentic information on Africa past and present. I am your host, Adesoji Iginla, an African history scholar with years of study in the bag. For more information on Africa's history and geopolitics, subscribe to Adesoji Speaks Knowledge on YouTube. Without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Hello and welcome to Adesoji Speaks Knowledge, the podcast where I share my thoughts and insights on the various topics as related to Africa. I am your host, Adesoji Iginla, and today we're diving deep into that defines the Democratic Republic of Congo, but this time using book recommendations. For those who are not aware, Democratic Republic of Congo, often referred to as the beating heart of Africa, but not to be confused with the Republic of Congo, which is the smaller of the two, is a land of contrasts, complexities, and captivating stories. In terms of size, Democratic Republic of in empiric measured as 900,000 square miles, which is the size of Western Europe, or better still, 2/3 of the size of the Indian subcontinent. The only country in Africa to have 2 time zones. This topic gives you an insight into understanding Congo beyond the news. So today I'm happy to share with you 10 essential books that I believe, in my honest opinion, should give you an extraordinary insight into the country called Democratic Republic of Congo. Be on the lookout. I promise to add also 2 books at the end. So without further ado, let's get started. The first of 10 is King Leopold's Ghost, written by Adam Hochschild. This groundbreaking work delves into the harrowing colonial history of Congo, or the King Leopold of Belgium. It uncovers the atrocities during the so-called rubber boom in the late 19th and early 20th century. It goes into how European nations grabbed last chunks of Africa, that is the Berlin Conference, and the reasons for their colonialism. But in this case, step forward King Leopold, who described himself as a philanthropy person, and although went on to exploit Congo, he told Europeans tall tales of how he's abolished slavery. This book is essentially about 3 stories, or 4 stories in one. One is that of Edmond Morel, who goes on to found movements that looked into stopping the atrocities in Congo. This book also looks at the barbarity of the crimes, the period of exploration and conquest before said crimes, and finally, the way the world had been silenced without acknowledging the atrocities that took place in the Congo. You will also learn that in the later part of the book that many publishers were approached with publishing this book. Unfortunately, they said no. And so it gives us an insight into how history has often been silenced. Without mincing my words, I would say before you listen to any other news story or article about Congo, read Adam Hochschild's King Leopold's Ghost. Book number 2 is Congo, Plunder and Resistance by David Renton, David Seddon, and Leo Zeilig. It is an examination of the history of the plunder and resistance and sheds light on the struggle of the people of Congo. What makes it, however, a very interesting read is that it follows a chronological order from pre-colonial period before ending at just the beginning of the 21st century. Throughout this book, you will encounter characters such as Morton Stanley, Leopold, Lumumba, and Mobutu. But the underlying argument of this book in particular is that the problems of Congo region had never occurred within just Congo, but rather within the larger geopolitical arena. The authors have taken pains to point out that simply because the problems of the DRC or Zaire, as it was then known, is oftentimes the stereotypical lack of governance on behalf of the Africans, that could not be farther from the truth. In fact, the final chapters of this book actually alludes to the fact of the complicities of geopolitical powers, Western and also African leaders that are around. It is 243 pages of detailed analysis. And so, yes, it's a book worth having. The third book is by Jason Stearns, titled Dancing in the Glory of Monsters, a comprehensive insight into what has plagued the entire regions around Southern Africa, most especially that Central African hub where Congo sits. And he accounts for the Congolese War, or otherwise known as the Great War of Africa, being that it brought in so many other parties. It focuses mainly on Congolese politics around the people. It's a book that centers on state actors, non-state actors, and of course the Congolese itself, and how they all got entangled in what is the Congo. And the entire debacle is often referred to as the African World's War. The book rightly starts at the beginning, the Rwandan massacre of Tutsis by the Hutus. Although many might find it strange that majority of the troubles in Congo has been impacted by neighboring countries. But here is the thing. Beyond the Berlin Conference, those borders are colonial constructs and non-existent to the local communities. So Jason Stearns has taken quite a holistic look at the entire region, within and outside of Congo, and the motivations for those who are party to this debacle, and goes into breaking down how it is. The most important of which is the government of neighboring Paul Kagame, who helped topple Mobutu Sese Seko. So if you want to understand the current issues, book number 4, it's The Congo, From Leopold to Kabila, A People's History, written by George Nzongala Intalaja. This book traces its trajectory from colonialism to independence and beyond, offering a nuanced understanding of the country's challenges. When you start to search for answers about why there is so much confusion and frustration about the Congo, you want to come to this book. Why? Majority of the books I've alluded to actually draw their expertise from this gentleman, George Nzongala, who fills in many blanks for all of us who have fallen asleep at the wheels when it comes to understanding and following the events of Congo. I'll consider this book to be read immediately after you read Adam Hochschild's King Leopold's Ghost, as it takes you from colonialization into the realm of independence and up to present-day activities and events that shape Belgian Congo, Zaire, or Democratic Republic of Congo in those kind of whatever names they've been called in the course of time, because it's somewhat a painful read about the wasted talents that have been robbed of Congo, the billions and trillions of dollars that despots, corporate interests have taken out of Congo into our cheap phones and whatever gadgets that we now use. And yes, it's a book I would recommend, The Congo. So if you wish to see the story of the Congo from someone who has lived the story, both inside and outside of the country, The Congo is a book for you. The next one is Congo, the Epic Story of a People by David Van Redvik. This is a very comprehensive account, and draws anthropological insights to create a compelling story about the Congolese experience. However, where the book falls short is the author has failed to acknowledge the extent of Belgium's involvement, probably because he's a Belgian. And you find throughout the book, apologies are made for the extent of the troubles. Occasionally, his statements are offensively incorrect. For instance, to demote what Morton Stanley had referenced in Destroying Congolese Village by saying he might have exaggerated a bit, not condemning the action itself. Some of you might then be asking me, why is it that I am then recommending this book if indeed it is what I claim it to be? As a Belgian, I expected him to be aware, but obviously he is doing his bit for silencing of history. But this book holds a much more comprehensive data on the Congo. And because there is not something else out there that goes into detail like this book does, I would encourage the reading, but let's just say with a pinch of salt. In fact, if you're going to read this book, I would say you read it in conjunction with David Hochschild's Leopold Ghost. So the book again is Congo, the Epic History of a People. So we've come to the halfway mark. If you're getting value, please share and subscribe. The next book is The Assassination of Lumumba, written by Ludo De Witte. And this book goes into detail about the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, the Congolese first democratically elected prime minister, revealing the dark underbelly of Cold War politics. Essentially, it talks about the betrayal of a man, the country, and her people. So this book goes into detail what happened between June the 1st, 1960, and when the problems began. The Belgians did not want to go away, so immediately started hatching plots of how to undermine the government of Patrice Lumumba. Also, the CIA did not like the new prime minister, and so thinking he might be a communist, which was far from the truth, but since he couldn't be manipulated to serve American interests, he had to be gotten rid of. And this book details everything that led to his assassination, including that of Maurice Mpolo and Okito, the two cabinet ministers who suffered gruesome death by firing squad in Katanga. The next book, which brings me to number 7 book, is Lumumba, Patrice Lumumba, an African lost leader. Again, I repeat, Lumumba, African lost leader. Why do I repeat? This book is very important to understanding. In fact, it's the only book out there that goes into detail about the life from beginning to the end of Patrice Lumumba. It gives us an understanding of the man himself, because not many books out there are actually written about his life. So Leo Zeilig has done a very good job of detailing Patrice Lumumba's life from beginning to death. And I enjoy people to read this enduring legacy about how he fought up till the end. His understanding, his expressions are chronicled in this book. Again, the title of the book is Patrice Lumumba, African Lost Leader. And if anything, this should sit alongside Ludo De Witte's Assassination. So it gives you those books tied together along the same dictates, but this begins from an earlier point because it begins from the start of his life, how he came into politics, and how he got to the point where he became a point of assassination for the Western interest. The next book, The Challenge of the Congo, written by Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah writes a brilliant assessment of what transpired in the halls of power, which is where this book, again, The Challenge of the Congo, comes into its own. It was a case of how the foreign pressures on Congo to the point where the country could not hold. And the level of interference, both within and outside of Congo, nothing could have summarized what Nkrumah was about when he said the independence of Ghana was incomplete or meaningless unless it was linked up with the total liberation of the African continent. And he said that as long as 1 inch of the African soil was still under colonial rule, Africa was not free nor secure. And this book is Nkrumah's pledge to highlighting and documenting the complicity of the West and the United Nations in the debacle that is Congo today. In fact, I would quickly read something from the man when he says the reason for writing the book are pretty straightforward. The history of independent Congo has been unusual right from the achievement of independence in 1960. It was faced with unusual trials and temptations, and the independent African states, including Ghana, were called upon to give it much assistance. Furthermore, the events that have taken place in the Congo since its independence constitute a turning point in the history of Africa. If we allow the independence of Congo to be compromised in any way by the imperialists and neocolonialists, the whole of Africa will be exposed to grave risk. There must be an African solution to the crisis in Congo. And so, this book is a testament to explaining what has gone, what happened, who was involved, and what the Africans did to help themselves out of that situation. So it is Challenge of the Congo by Kwame Nkrumah. Africa's World War, Congo, the Rwandan Genocide and the Making of a Continental Catastrophe by Gerard Prunier. This book lays bare the complex dynamic between Rwanda and Congo that have been driving this disaster. In the recent days or recent weeks, you will have heard about the M23 rebels troubling the eastern side of Congo. This is a continuation of what transpired during the Africans' World War, and essentially how the mines are being exploited for the resources. This book goes into extraordinary detail as to how the Rwanda genocide is actually used as cover to destabilize the Congo. And it's a very deep read in the sense that he has spared no record in bringing this book into being. I would enjoin people to get it, because not only would you understand how the parties around Congo came into invading Congo. Yes, countries around Congo invading Congo because, what was the claim again? they were chasing their enemies into the Congo because they considered Congo to be destable, and their enemies were hiding in Congo, using that as cover to come and exploit resources in the Congo. This is the book for you. It's titled Africa's World War by Gerard Prunier. Africa's World War by Gerard Prunier. The last of the 10th book is Katanga, 1960 to 1963, written by Christopher Orton. Now, what makes this book pertinent is the eastern side of Congo was once a breakaway country called Katanga between 1960 and 1963. And this book, although I would also enjoin people, just Congo, the history of a people, to read with a grain of salt. This book is important in the sense that it shows how minerals, private contractors, or as they're now called, non-state actors, or better used term is mercenaries. The CIA would sponsor them, and global corporations come in and picking Congo clean. This book goes into detail in doing that. But however, where it falls short is the motivation for the breakaway region, saying it was an organic issue rather than pointing out that the fact it was a way of Belgium to undermine the government of Patrice Lumumba was why they supported the breakaway of this country, or a country for 3 years. And so the motivation he alludes to is that it was people asserting their own independence, wherein all the other documents that are bound suggest otherwise. And I don't know what the motivation was for taking that line, because the documents are out there that clearly states Katanga was used to undermine. Katanga and Kasai, which was another country, used to undermine the powers of Patrice Lumumba in order to break his back, or break his will, as it were. So, again, the book is Katanga, 1960 to 1963, subtitled Mercenary Spies and the African Nations That Waged War on the World, written by Christopher Orton. I did promise to provide two bonus readings, which brings me to, let me say, Who Killed Dag Hammarskjold is the first of the two. The UN and the Cold War and White Supremacy in Africa, written by Susan Williams. This book goes into detail about the plane crash that claimed the life of the then UN Secretary General in the southeastern side of Congo, in a place known as Ndola, in September 1961. And it examines documents that have since come into light. But the detail with which the book is written is a testimony to the diligence of the writer, Susan Williams. The level of research, the level of detail is impeccable. And I must say, so much so that the case, which was previously set aside, has now been reopened. And they're still looking at the possibilities of finding a closure for this particular case. But the problem lies in the fact that so long as the UK, South Africa, and the United States do not open their archives, we might not know what happened on that ill-fated plane crash. But it's important to understand that the UN, having been in Congo now, one of the longest, in fact, the longest serving peacekeeping mission in the world, it's important to draw an understanding as to how that came to be. So this book, written by Susan Williams, who killed Hammarskjold, the UN, the Cold War, and the white supremacy in Africa, is a very important book about understanding the UN's role in Congo, what brought Congo into the UN, what brought the UN into Congo, rather. And the last but not the least of the two bonus books is White Malice, again by Susan Williams. Words cannot even begin to say how I feel about this book. It is a brilliant read. The book, again, is titled White Malice, the CIA and the Neocolonization of Africa. Without even going into detail, this book the cover alone tells you what this book is about. It starts from the CIA intervention in Africa. Once the Belgians left, the Americans could not wait to go in. And once they did go in, in fact, the involvement starts from 1958 at the All African People's Congress in Accra, Ghana, where liberation leaders attended a meeting of African peoples at the behest of Kwame Nkrumah. Lumumba will attend. And in fact, Lumumba, because the whole event was organized on the basis of people coming to say what they envisaged to be the part of glory for their African country, caution was thrown to the wind. Everybody was there. Most of the people were not vetted. In fact, it turned out that the person who acted as interpreter for Lumumba might have been, or in fact, it was later proven to be a spy. The Russians were also there. And in fact, it was a brilliant window into understanding how the CIA came into Africa. Because this book then goes into how the Congo was then undermined on the basis of what they've already learned from Lumumba, what his motivation were, and the moment the Americans realized they could not work with Lumumba, what they then did was vilification, calling him all sorts of names under the sun, referring to him as a communist, which he clearly wasn't. But as if you want to hang a dog, you give it a bad name. It goes into how the CIA has since then undermined various liberation movements. In fact, how so many of the magazines on the African continent were bankrolled under pseudonyms, funded by the CIA. And I could go on and on about this book. So I will enjoin people to get it. And with that, you have a full picture. The other books previously enumerated, you have a full picture of the goings on in the Congo. So again, just to round up, it will be The White Malice by Susan Williams, Who Killed Dag Hammarskjold by Susan Williams, Katanga 1960 to 1963 by Christopher Otten, Africa's World War by Gerard Prunier, Challenge of the Congo by Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, Africa's Lost Leader by Leo Zeilig. The Assassination of Lumumba by Ludo De Witte. Congo, The Epic History of a People by David Renton. The Congo, From Leopold to Kabila, A People's History by Judges Nzogula Puntalaja. Dancing in the Glory of Monsters by Jason K. Stearns. Congo, Plunder and Resistance by David Renton, David Seddon, and Leo Zeilig. And last but not the least, King Leopold's Ghost by Adam Hochschild are 12 books I would recommend for anyone who wants to gain a very important insight into Congo, why, how, the why, and why it is the way it is today. This book would give you an overarching view that any story that subsequently gets spun or breaks out in Congo, you are well aware of what transpired. Again, I would say it's a subject matter that needs real understanding, because the real story of Congo is important, not just for the people, but also for the people looking in. And all of these books help to illuminate the complexities and contradictions that define the Democratic Republic of Congo. So, as always, I'll thank you for tuning in to Adesoji Speaks Knowledge. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep seeking the truth. Peace. I hope you found this week's episode informative. Join us next week on Adesoji Speaks Knowledge as we continue to help you reframe the narrative about the African continent, past and present, by providing you with accurate information to give you a true and clearer picture of events as it pertains to Africa. Please remember to subscribe, like, and share. Thank you.